The message wasn't supposed to mean anything. Just 3 words. I remember you. But for Officer Lena Carter, it changed everything. Because the man who sent it wasn't just anyone. He was a suspect she once put in handcuffs. So why did her pulse spike the moment she saw his name? And more importantly, why couldn't she bring herself to ignore it? 3 years earlier, the case had seemed straightforward. Armed robbery, late evening, a small convenience store just off a quiet suburban highway. No fatalities, no dramatic chase, just a masked suspect, a weapon, and a witness who barely got a look at his face. Officer Lena Carter had been one of the first responders on scene. Back then, she was everything a young officer was trained to be: focused, disciplined, emotionally contained. The kind of officer who followed procedure down to the smallest detail, no hesitation, no second guessing. At least, that's what everyone believed. But what she didn't realize was that this case would follow her long after the paperwork was filed. The suspect had been caught 2 days later. His name was Marcus Hale, 23, no prior convictions, clean record, too clean, some had said. And when Lena first saw him sitting in that interrogation room, something didn't add up. He didn't look like what she expected. No nervous twitching, no defensive posture, no anger, just calm, too calm. That's when everything changed. Marcus didn't deny being at the scene, but he didn't fully confess either. Instead, he gave answers that felt incomplete, like he was telling the truth, but not all of it. I was there, he said quietly, his voice steady, but not for the reasons you think. Lena remembered the way he looked at her, not with fear, not with arrogance, but with something she couldn't quite place: recognition. And it unsettled her more than anything else, because suspects weren't supposed to look at you like that. Weeks later, despite inconsistencies in his statement, Marcus took a plea deal. The case was closed. Or at least, that's what it looked like on paper. But what she didn't realize was, it had never really ended. Back in the present, Lena stared at her phone screen, her thumb hovering over the message. I remember you. No context, no explanation, just that. She hadn't heard his name in years, hadn't thought about the case in a long time. At least, that's what she told herself. But the truth was, she remembered everything. The way his story didn't quite fit. The way the store's security footage had a gap no one could explain. The way he accepted the charge almost too easily. And most of all, the way he looked at her like he already knew something she didn't. That moment changed everything. Lena locked her phone and set it down, trying to ignore the unease building in her chest. This wasn't appropriate, not just because he was a former suspect, but because something about this felt personal. And that was dangerous, especially for someone in her position. Still, curiosity has a way of breaking even the strongest discipline. So later that night, Lena did something she hadn't done in years. She reopened the file. The case details were exactly as she remembered. Time of incident, 9:42 p.m. Weapon, handgun, never recovered. Amount stolen, just under $2,000. No fingerprints, no DNA, just one partial witness description and a grainy surveillance clip that barely showed the suspect's face. But as Lena scrolled through the report again, something caught her attention, a detail she had overlooked before, or maybe something she hadn't wanted to question. The timeline. According to the store clerk, the suspect had entered at 9:42 p.m., but the security footage timestamp showed 9:47 p.m. 5 minutes. It didn't seem like much, but in police work, 5 minutes can change everything.
But what she didn't realize was, she wasn't the only one revisiting the past. The next morning, Lena received another message, this time longer. You always asked the right questions, just not the right ones. Her heart tightened. This wasn't random. He was trying to tell her something. But why now? Why after 3 years? And that's where things shifted. Lena leaned back in her chair, her mind racing. If Marcus had something new to say, why not go through proper channels? Why reach out to her directly? Unless he didn't trust the system anymore. Or worse, unless the system had failed him. And that thought stayed with her, right there in the middle of everything she thought she understood. Now, if you're following this story closely, you're probably starting to see what Lena couldn't ignore anymore. Because sometimes the most dangerous cases aren't the ones that stay open. They're the ones that close too quickly. And what she uncovered next would make her question everything. But before we go further, if you're drawn to stories like this, where truth hides beneath layers of silence, make sure you're following the channel. Because this case, it's only just beginning. Lena didn't respond to the message right away. Instead, she did what she always did. She investigated, quietly, off the record. She started with Marcus Hale's release details. He had served just under 2 years, reduced sentence for good behavior. No incidents, no violations. And since his release, nothing. No new charges, no known associations. It was like he disappeared, or worse, like he was never meant to be found. But what she didn't realize was, Marcus hadn't reached out by accident. Later that evening, her phone buzzed again, a third message. This one sent a chill down her spine. Go back to the store, look behind the counter. Lena froze. That detail had never been public, not in reports, not in court documents. Only officers on the scene would know about that area, which meant Marcus knew something he shouldn't, or he was never supposed to be the one arrested. That's when everything changed. For the first time since the case closed, Lena felt it. Doubt, not just about Marcus, but the entire investigation. She grabbed her keys without thinking, because suddenly, this wasn't about protocol anymore. It wasn't even about the past. It was about something unfinished, something hidden, and maybe something that connected her to him in ways she didn't fully understand. As she stepped out into the night, one thought refused to leave her mind. If Marcus Hale wasn't the real story, then who was? And why did it feel like he had been waiting, just for her to ask the right question? The kind she missed 3 years ago. The kind that could change everything. And as Lena drove toward the same store where it all began, she had no idea she wasn't just reopening a case. She was stepping into a truth that would blur every line she swore never to cross. And this time, it wouldn't just be about justice, it would be personal. The store looked exactly the same. Same flickering sign, same quiet parking lot, same feeling that something here had been left unfinished. But Officer Lena Carter wasn't the same person who stood here 3 years ago. Because this time, she wasn't just looking for evidence, she was looking for the truth Marcus Hale risked everything to hint at. And maybe something deeper she didn't want to admit. But what she didn't realize was, she wasn't alone in this anymore. Lena stepped inside, the faint hum of fluorescent lights buzzing overhead. The clerk on duty barely looked up. Different face, different night, same place. Her eyes moved instinctively toward the counter. Behind it, exactly where Marcus had had told her to look. That's when everything changed.
She walked around slowly, pretending to browse, until she found herself standing near the edge of the counter. Her heart was beating faster now, faster than it should for something this simple. Then she saw it. A small, nearly invisible panel, loose, not broken, just off. Lena crouched slightly, her pulse tightening as she reached behind the counter and pressed against it. It shifted, and behind it was something no one had ever logged into evidence. A second camera, hidden, old, but intact. But what she didn't realize was this discovery would rewrite everything, because that camera, it had never been mentioned in the original case file, not once. And that's where things shifted. Back in her car, Lena sat frozen, staring at the device now resting on the passenger seat. If this camera was operational during the robbery, then someone had deliberately ignored it. Or worse, someone had made sure it stayed hidden. Her thoughts drifted immediately to Marcus. You always ask the right questions, just not the right ones. Her grip tightened on the steering wheel. Was he guiding her or manipulating her? Because those were two very different things. But what she didn't realize was Marcus had been waiting for this exact moment. That night, she finally replied. Just 3 words. Why help me? The response came almost instantly. Because you were the only one who looked twice. Lena stared at the message, her chest tightening in a way she couldn't explain. This wasn't just about the case anymore. It hadn't been for a while. That's when everything changed. The next few days blurred into quiet obsession. Lena accessed the camera's storage through unofficial channels, careful, precise, off the record. What she found wasn't just unsettling, it was impossible. The footage, fragmented but clear enough, showed the night of the robbery, 9:41 p.m. A figure entered the store, but it wasn't Marcus. The build was different, the posture more aggressive, less controlled, and most importantly, the timing didn't match Marcus's statement. But what she didn't realize was this was only half the truth, because at 9:46 p.m., Marcus appeared on camera, unmasked, walking into the same store, calm, focused, like he knew exactly what had already happened. Lena leaned back, her breath catching. He wasn't the robber, he arrived after. But then, why did he confess? What happened next wasn't expected. Her phone buzzed again. Marcus. Now you see it? Lena hesitated before replying. You weren't there for the robbery. A pause. Then, no, but I was there for something worse. Her chest tightened. This wasn't just a misunderstanding. This was something deeper, something darker. But what she didn't realize was Marcus was starting to let her in. And that came with consequences. Because the more he revealed, the closer she got. Not just to the truth, but to him. Now, if you're starting to feel the tension building here, you're not alone, because this is where everything shifts from a case to something personal. And if you're drawn to stories like this, where every answer leads to a deeper question, make sure you're following the channel, because what comes next, it changes everything. Lena couldn't ignore it anymore, so she did what she knew she shouldn't. She agreed to meet him. Off duty, off record, no backup, no report, just her and Marcus Hale. That's when everything changed. The meeting place was quiet, an empty park just outside the city. Late evening, no cameras, no witnesses. Marcus was already there when she arrived, leaning casually against a bench like he had nothing to hide.
and somehow that made it worse. Lena stepped closer, her instincts on edge, but her emotions, they were harder to control. Because seeing him again, it didn't feel like facing a suspect, it felt like something she couldn't define. "You shouldn't have come," she said, her voice steady, but not cold. Marcus smiled faintly. "You still did."
But what she didn't realize was, this moment would blur every line she had left. For a second, neither of them spoke, just silence, heavy, charged. Then Marcus finally looked at her, really looked, and this time there was no interrogation room between them. "No one ever checked that camera," he said quietly, "because no one wanted to." Lena's jaw tightened. Who? Marcus hesitated, and that hesitation said everything. That's the part you're not gonna like. That's when everything changed. Lena stepped closer. "Then say it." Marcus exhaled slowly, his expression shifting, less guarded now, more conflicted. "The robbery wasn't random," he said, "and it wasn't about the money." Lena felt her pulse spike. Then what was it about? Marcus met her eyes. "You." Silence, sharp, immediate, impossible. Lena shook her head slightly. "That doesn't make any sense." "It will," he said, "but not yet." But what she didn't realize was, Marcus wasn't lying, at least not completely, because the truth was far more dangerous than either of them expected, and it was already pulling them closer, closer than they should ever be. And this will change everything. Lena tried to regain control of the moment. "This isn't how this works," she said. "You don't get to drop pieces and expect me to just follow." Marcus took a step forward, not threatening, but intentional. "You already are." Her breath caught, because he wasn't wrong, and that terrified her more than anything else. Not the case, not the hidden camera, not even the possibility that someone else had committed the crime, but this, the way she felt standing here, the way he looked at her, like she wasn't just an officer, like she was part of something bigger, something neither of them fully understood yet. But what she didn't realize was, Marcus had been holding something back, something that would change everything. "I didn't confess to protect myself," he said quietly. Lena's eyes narrowed. "Then why did you?" Marcus hesitated, just long enough to make it worse. Then he said it. "I confessed to protect you." And just like that, everything unraveled. Lena froze. Every instinct, every piece of training, none of it prepared her for that. "From what?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Marcus didn't answer immediately. Instead, he looked past her, like he was remembering something he wished he could forget. "From someone who knew you'd ask the right questions, eventually." A chill ran through her, because suddenly, this wasn't just about a case anymore. It was about her, her past, her role in something she didn't even realize she was part of. And as she stood there trying to piece it together, one thought became impossible to ignore. If Marcus took the fall to protect her, then someone else had been watching her all along, waiting. And now that she was asking the right questions, she wasn't just investigating a crime, she was stepping into a target. And this time, walking away might not be an option. "From someone who knew you'd ask the right questions, eventually." Lena didn't move, didn't breathe, because in that moment, everything she thought she understood about the case, about Marcus, about herself, collapsed. "Who?" she asked again, her voice sharper now. Marcus finally looked at her, and this time, there was no hesitation. "Someone inside your department." That was the turning point she didn't see coming.
The air between them turned cold, not metaphorically, real, heavy with the kind of truth that doesn't just expose a case, but destroys trust. Lena took a step back, her instinct screaming now, not just as an officer, but as someone who had just crossed a line she couldn't uncross. "This isn't a game," she said. "You're accusing police officers." "I'm not accusing," Marcus replied quietly. "I'm telling you what I saw."
But what she didn't realize was, this was the moment everything would split. Love, duty, truth. And only one of them would survive intact. Because if Marcus was telling the truth, then the robbery wasn't just a crime. It was a setup. And she had been part of it without even knowing. And suddenly, the story changed. "Start from the beginning," Lena said, her voice steady again, but tighter now. Marcus nodded slowly. "That night," he began, "I wasn't there to rob the store. I was there to meet someone." Lena's eyes narrowed. "Who?" "A man I'd been doing small jobs for, nothing major. Deliveries, messages, cash pickups. I didn't ask questions." That didn't surprise her. "But that night felt different," Marcus continued. "He told me to come at a specific time, said I'd be paid double." Lena's pulse quickened. 9:45. Marcus nodded. "But when I got there, the robbery had already happened." What happened next rewrote everything. Lena's mind raced faster now, connecting pieces faster now. "The first guy on camera," she said. "That wasn't you." "No," Marcus replied, "and I think he wasn't supposed to be seen." A chill ran through her, because now the timeline made sense. The missing 5 minutes, the hidden camera, the rushed investigation. But what she didn't realize was the worst part was still coming. "What happened when you walked in?" she asked. Marcus hesitated, and that hesitation said everything. "I saw the clerk," he said quietly. Shaken, but not surprised. Lena frowned. "Not surprised?" Marcus nodded, like it wasn't the first time something like that had happened, like it was expected. That's when everything changed. Lena's stomach tightened, because now this wasn't just about one robbery, it was a pattern, a system, and someone had been controlling it. "Then why confess?" she asked again, more urgently now. Marcus looked at her, and for the first time his composure cracked. "Because someone walked in right after me," he said. "Someone in uniform." Silence. Deafening. Lena's heart dropped. "Who?" she whispered. Marcus shook his head slightly. "I didn't know his name back then, but I knew one thing." He stepped closer. "He knew you." And just like that, everything unraveled. Lena felt it hit her all at once. Not fear, not confusion, recognition. Because suddenly, memories she hadn't questioned before started shifting. The officer who arrived just minutes after her, the one who had taken control of the scene, the one who had insisted the case was clean. Detective Aaron Blake. But what she didn't realize was, Marcus already knew she'd figure it out. "I didn't say anything back then, because I saw the way he looked at you." Lena's chest tightened. "What way?" Marcus's voice dropped. "Like you mattered to the outcome." And that's when everything changed. Now, if you've made it this far into the story, you can probably feel it too. That moment where everything stops being coincidence and starts becoming intention. So if you're drawn to stories like this, where truth hides behind authority, make sure you're following the channel, because what happens next, it's the kind of ending you don't forget. Lena didn't waste another second. She drove straight to the precinct, every thought sharper now, every instinct louder. Because if Blake was involved, then this wasn't just corruption, it was control, and she had been walking inside it for years. That's when everything changed. Blake was there. Of course he was, sitting at his desk like nothing had ever been wrong,
like nothing was about to unravel. "Lena," he said casually, "didn't expect to see you this late." She didn't respond, just walked straight toward him, file in hand, eyes locked. "You missed something in the Hale case," she said. Blake leaned back slightly, studying her. "Did I?" Lena dropped the device, the hidden camera, onto his desk. The room shifted, just slightly. Enough, because Blake didn't look surprised. That's when everything changed.
"You weren't supposed to find that," he said quietly. No denial, no confusion, just acceptance. Lena held her breath catch. "Why?" she demanded. Blake stood slowly. "Because some things work better when people don't ask questions." Her jaw tightened. "You framed him." Blake shook his head slightly. "No, I redirected the outcome." But what she didn't realize was Blake wasn't done explaining. "The store was being used," he continued. "Money movement, quiet, controlled. The robbery, that was part of a cleanup." Lena stared at him. "And Marcus?" "Wrong place, wrong time," Blake said, "but useful." That's when everything changed. Lena's voice dropped. "And you?" Blake looked at her differently now, not as a colleague, but as a variable. "You were the risk," he said. "You see things, you always have." Silence filled the space between them, heavy, final. Then Lena made her choice. That's when everything changed. She reached for her cuffs, not slowly, not hesitantly, but with certainty. "Detective Aaron Blake," she said, her voice steady. "You're under arrest." For a moment, no one moved. Then Blake smiled, faint, almost impressed. "About time," he said. And just like that, it was over. Or at least, that's what it looked like. But what she didn't realize was the story still had one last truth left. Weeks later, the case made headlines. Internal corruption, evidence suppression, wrongful conviction. Marcus Hale was cleared, officially, publicly. But Lena didn't feel relief, because some things don't resolve that cleanly. That's when everything changed. She met Marcus one last time. Same park, same silence, but different now. Lighter and heavier at the same time. "You're free," she said. Marcus nodded. "Because of you." Lena shook her head slightly. "No, because of the truth." A pause. Then Marcus looked at her. Not like before, not with mystery, but with something real. "And now what?" he asked. That question lingered longer than anything else, because this time, it wasn't about the case, it was about them. Lena exhaled slowly. "You move forward. And you?" She hesitated, just for a second. Then, "I stay where I belong." And suddenly, the story changed. Marcus smiled faintly, not disappointed, just understanding. Because some connections aren't meant to last, they're meant to reveal. And as he walked away, Lena didn't stop him, because for the first time since this began, she knew exactly where the line was, and she chose not to cross it. But the final truth, it stayed with her, because Marcus Hale had been right from the beginning. She always asked the right questions, just not at the right time. And sometimes, that's all it takes to change everything. If you believe Lena made the right choice by arresting Blake instead of protecting herself, what would you have done in her position? If you believe Marcus hid more than he revealed, do you think he was protecting Lena or protecting himself? If this story made you question the line between truth, loyalty, and love, then you're exactly where you need to be. Make sure you comment your thoughts below. I read every single one, and I want to know what you would have done.
Share this video with someone who loves chilling, mind-twisting true crime stories like this. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications, because the next story might be even darker.